Christmas lights, dude.
And I want those smart ones that you aim the camera at. It maps where all the lights are, and then you can make patterns that go up the side of the tree.
I just want ones that work. I want ones that emit light. How about that? Is that a good baseline to establish?
Look, here's the deal. Those fancy ones are like $400. I'll give you all of my existing lights. You give me $400 evensies.
I don't think that that's a good deal. I'm sorry. I haven't seen your collection of lights yet. Maybe we're talking about a quantity that I'm unaware of.
I have a tub of lights. I'm not giving you the exterior ones. I do have the outside lights. That's too much.
I bought an extremely short string of lights last year. 10 lights.
That's not very many lights.
Because on each light is a little miniature version of, remember the leg lamp from A Christmas Story?
Yeah, it's an important piece of art.
Yes, of course. It's just a little 10 light string of those. Just a bunch of little light up leg lamps.
Look, I have a confession, Brad.
Yes.
I've never seen A Christmas Story.
What?
I know. Everybody has gaps.
Stop this podcast. We're going to pause right now. Okay, we're back. Will has just watched A Christmas Story.
I didn't expect it to go the way it went.
It's really some shit, isn't it?
Yeah, when they amputated that kid's leg and turned it into a lamp, I was like, that is surprising.
You didn't know what kind of art they were talking about.
Right. I wasn't expecting like a saw turn there midway through. But
yeah, Christmas is some serious business in the heartland. Yeah, we spent like $25 on that string of novelty lights.
Damn.
We were getting the decorations out a couple days ago.
Uh-huh.
I plugged them in. They worked just fine.
Uh-huh.
I got all excited that they worked. I strung them up where we actually wanted them, plugged them back in. They had ceased to work.
You think it's the plug that you plugged them into the second time?
No, I tried it all over the place. I tried it in 3 different plugs.
You got like one. Is it a one bad bulb sitch?
I probably.
Look, there's only 10 of them. All you need to do is take the bulb out of each one and replace it one at a time, and then see which one is the dead bulb.
Are those like universal-ish? Like, I don't think this particular, for $25, you would think that it would have come with a few spare bulbs, but I don't believe it did. But yeah, can you pull them out of a different string made by somebody else?
Let's say sure.
Sounds safe.
Is it LED bulbs? Usually LED bulbs don't die like that.
They're incandescent.
Oh, so that's the problem. Yeah, the incandescent ones are totally universal. Just get some spare incandescents, plug them in, you're good to go.
Okay. Maybe I can salvage this extremely expensive novelty item then. What is the mechanism? Is it just like a circuit thing? Is that what is a circuit being broken, and is that why they stop working?
Yeah, so if they're wired in parallel, then the one light bulb burns out and they keep going. If they're wired in series, one light burns out and they stop, all of them, because no electricity goes down the line, because it's just like bulb wire, bulb wire, bulb wire, bulb wire, all the way back around to the plug, right? If they're wired in parallel, there's one wire that goes all the way down and touches every single one of them.
I see.
And then the other wire goes, maybe there's 2 wires that go down and touch every single one of them. Anyway, it's more expensive to make them in parallel, so nobody does. Here's my life hack for you. You can get a set of LED bulbs and take the legs off of the shitty incandescent bulbs and just put the legs on the bulbs that you want instead of the bulbs that you have.
Yeah, where am I going to get a string of only 10 LED bulbs, though?
Look, if they're parallel, just to cut the 10 off.
Wait.
Get a string of 25.
Is that
cut
safe?
The end off, tape up the ends. You're good.
Is that safe?
Probably.
There's a lot of probably in this cold intro. I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. What's up, Will? Happy holidays.
Thanksgiving's over, man. Yeah. I've eaten a lot of stuffing.
We're in it. We're in the holidays.
Yeah.
We're post one holiday and pre another.
We're getting most of our holiday shopping done this weekend for the first time in history.
Like remote shopping?
I mean, I'm not going anywhere. Are you kidding?
Okay.
It's everywhere. It's filled with peril, fraught with peril.
Just making sure.
We made your mom's broccoli casserole.
Oh, the broccoli casserole.
Always.
I was sad that we did not make it because we had other heavy dairy-based vegetable dishes going on, and I was it's maybe a little indulgent to also do the broccoli casserole.
I've never met a casserole I wouldn't consider over something that's healthier. Yeah, it was good. I think I made the best apple pie I've ever made this year.
Oh,
Yeah, we couldn't get the Macintoshes we usually get, and I did a couple of Granny Smiths and a bunch of Cortlands. And Cortlands are like a baking apple that's it's kind of crappy when you eat it raw. It's a little soft, but when you bake it, it holds up in the way that the Granny Smith does, but it tastes like a Macintosh. It was a good ass apple. I was very impressed. Real nice.
Are you guys still making your own crusts?
I did not make my own crusts this year. No.
Wow. Just not standing on ceremony anywhere this year, huh?
Look, it was the other thing we learned about this year is that the cooking isn't really the part that stresses us out before Thanksgiving. It's the keeping the house clean while we're also cooking.
Sure.
So like it's fine to spend 20 hours over like 4 days cooking to make food for a bunch of people. That's no problem. But like keeping everything not looking like it's just absolutely hovel was the hard. Anyway, we survived. Thanksgiving was fine. We did a FaceTime with a bunch of the people who usually come, and then everybody retired off to play video games with their friends from around the country in other parts of the house, which as I was sitting there playing Hades on the TV from the PC in the office, I was like, man, I remember when I spent dozens of hours and hundreds of dollars trying to be able to play Doom with my friend who lived like 4 doors down in the dorm.
You could have just gotten a wagon for $20 and just wheeled your PC over there.
Well, I didn't have an Ethernet card. They were really expensive. I just had a modem.
Okay.
So we used the modems, and eventually we got these weird modems that was like it could do full 28.8, but it could also do a split conversation with like a 14.4 data stream and a GSM voice channel over on the other side.
Same line?
So you plugged a headset into the modem, like a monaural headset into the modem, just like we use to say voice chat on a game console plugged into the controller now.
Very primordial version of TeamSpeak.
Kind of, yeah. But it was only 2 people. But we played a lot of Duke Nukem and Doom and cool. Descent. And I feel like there was one other thing, but I don't remember what it was. If Marty's listening, he'll let me know.
But to be clear, not the thing your parents wish it had been, which is that they could continue to use the phone for their own purposes while you were modeming.
Well, this is while I was in the dorm, so I didn't give a shit. Okay, they just couldn't call me. Once I figured out how to turn off call waiting, my roommate's girlfriend and my parents were all very disappointed.
So you both got to play multiplayer Doom and didn't have to answer the phone. That sounds like a win. That's a win all around.
It was fantastic. It was a glorious day. It was a terrible modem for the internet also.
Those are the types of feats you can achieve when you are the master of your own kingdom, when you have your dream abode.
The master of your own domain.
I'm trying to segue here to the topic.
When Will and Brad make a dream house.
That's right. That's the name of this episode. I'm just going to put that for the title. I think this just kind of floated out of the ether after that email we got last week about smart homes, and specifically about future-proofing a smart home.
Yeah, I went and started reading a lot about passive homes again, which remain very cool.
Yes. I think that emailer mentioned the passive home stuff.
Yeah. Because like we're in a situation where if I stay in California, I want to make my house the way I want it to be for the time that I'm going to spend living here, and not just have it be the place I've spent 13 years in and kind of like dealing with minor annoyances, but not making any significant changes to.
Well, why don't we take the shackles off here?
Yeah.
Why don't we dream bigger?
Okay.
Instead of being constrained by what you were working with currently.
Yeah.
I don't know. My idea was let's just spitball about some fun stuff that would be, good to do if money was not an object. Let's say.
I like money not being an object. That sounds fun.
If you had maybe not infinite space, but quite a bit of space, let's say.
We're going to need another 8,000 subscribers on the Tech Pod before we can make this stuff happen.
Just going to put the home ownership tier on there.
Yeah. Yeah. Brad buys a house.
You at least know what it's like to buy a house and own a house. I mean, like I don't know if we'll get into it here, but I've got all kinds of questions about like building code and like zoning stuff and.
Oh, that stuff's all recommendations. It's not actually binding. You just kind of it's a forgiveness, not permission situation.
Polite advice. Okay.
Yeah. 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 Buying a house is scary, man. You have to you have to come up with a whole bunch of cash. And then you give them this thing called earnest money. That means you're going to go through with the deal unless something changes on their end, and they get to keep the money if you don't go through with the deal. And it's like bad. $10,000.
That sounds like a bad deal.
I mean, look, you're saying you're going to buy their house. California is also a weird, like I bought a house in Tennessee. I bought a house in California. California, especially where we live, is a nightmare because
I didn't know you owned a Tennessee house.
Well, I bought a house for $58,000 in 1998. That was 4 bedrooms, 2 baths. I added a bathroom. It was a foreclosure and it needed a total redo. So some friends of mine did, like my mom and dad's contractor, the guy who does all their work for them, just moved down into the house for 3 months with one of his buddies. And like I would this was right when we started ours too. So I was getting up at 4:00 in the morning to go be at Home Depot or Lowe's when Lowe's opened and get all the shit that they had on their list from the night before. I would buy it because if I let the contractors go to Home Depot, that day was gone. I would never get anything done that day. So I would go collect all of the shit that they needed, put it in the back of the truck, drive it to the house, drop it off, and then get to my office by 7:30 in time for it to open, work until like 6:00 at night because I had a bad job. And then I would come home, stop and get food on the way home for the guys, drop it off, help them for 4 or 5 hours. At 10:00, I would go write the nightly news posts on Ars Technica. So if you go look at like December of 1998, early 1999 news posts written by me, those were all written on about 3 hours of sleep and 2 full-time jobs.
It's a hell of a grind.
And then I would go to sleep and wake up at 4:00 in the morning and do it the next day.
Jeez,
and the guys would leave on the weekend. So I had weekends, but my parents would come down and they would help do shit on the weekends. But those were like more normal. That was a more humane hour.
And then you immediately moved to California and never got to enjoy any of it.
I sold the house after I lived there for 12 months.
Wow.
And I made $60,000. So it was okay.
That's something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I made 35,000, but it was still, I was not unhappy.
Yeah. We're not really talking about buying houses so much as like molding them.
Yeah.
Into their idealized form here.
Like there's stuff living in a California house for the last 20 years, like double wall construction is nice. We have a couple of closets that are just like a sheet of drywall between the closet and the rest of the house. There's no like double layers of drywall and studs, which is just the shittiest way to build a house ever. Like there's that, but like fixing that is pretty expensive. Like we have to either eat into closet space or eat into wall space or like do significant work. And probably it's easier. Like that's a thing you would do if you tear down everything in the house and start over. There's also stuff that like I would totally do if we had a little bit more space, right? Like having a central, right now, all of like the electronics that run the house, the router and the switch and the modem and all that stuff are kind of like there's a switch in the crawl space that distributes because the main run goes to the crawl space. And then the router and stuff comes into the garage and there's a couple of runs back and forth from there to the main run. But it would be really nice to have just like a small rack someplace with all the networking shit and the router and all that just plugged into it so that like it's in one convenient location and like you can turn it on and off all at once and stuff like that.
That place is called a basement.
We don't have basements here, man.
I know that's a problem. That is one of the many problems with living here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very sad.
I mean, the garages are kind of like a lot of people in my neighborhood use their garage like we would have used a basement in Tennessee.
I think of garages as hot and basements as cool, though.
Yeah, I mean, basement. I assure you, my basement is cool.
You want your electronics in the cool place, not the hot place.
Yeah, but the everything is so poorly insulated here. It like if I was making one change to my house, I would take all the walls off and insulate the living shit out of it because
that's a pretty substantial change if you're only going to make one. But sure,
I mean, yeah, but it's always cold and drafty in this house. And all of these houses are like all of these tract homes that were built in the 50s and 60s and even through like the early 70s are like that here.
Sure. Well, so maybe this is a good chance to just get down to brass tacks on this whole topic, because I'm kind of curious, like what you would do if you were building from the ground up. Maybe we should run through the passive home stuff first, because that's what kind of got this started last week.
Yeah. So the passive home is an idea that was started by a physicist, I think, in the 70s in Europe. Yeah. Or maybe he just built the first one.
It's basically, I watched like the little kind of explainer video this morning, and it's basically like the modern thermodynamics home.
Pretty much.
Right? Like it's basically just about maximizing like energy retention and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the idea is that if you seal the house properly and insulate it properly, so triple pane windows, like all of when you're building the house, you make sure that all the places that air can escape or come in are closed up, either with like closed cell foam or insulation or weather sealing or something like that. And you make sure that the house is essentially airtight, right? And then at the same time, you also get rid of any bridges, places that heat can escape. So,
Yeah,
for example,
they didn't really go into a lot of detail about what that meant exactly in that video. Is it just like kind of like heat conductive material?
well, so it's less heat conductive material and stuff like chimneys, like your dryer vent is a perfect example.
Okay.
So if you think about it, your dryer vent takes warm air that would be inside the house and then blasts it out into space where it just warms that little spot right outside your vent. Things like, I mean, I guess pipes that go through walls conceivably fit that, but I don't know how much they care about that stuff because I can't imagine they actually conduct all that much heat. I'd say your plumbing vents probably have some aspect of that, but I don't know for sure. I haven't looked into like the actual mechanics on the low end. Things like the vents underneath to your crawl space, if you have a crawl space. Normally you have those to keep it from getting wet in there. And I'm sure they have some other solution for that because I bet that place stays sealed so it stays warm. But the idea of the passive house is that like the mere act of having heat generation, if stuff is insulated properly and there's shade in the summer, like the act of having people in the house and using it and having things like computers and TVs and ovens and stoves running will probably generate enough heat that you don't have to use a heater ever.
Yeah, that video I watched made the bold claim that you don't need a heater or air conditioner if you do this right.
So if I were building one of those today, I think I would probably still put some sort of heater and air conditioner in just to hedge against climate change, because it's easier to add that stuff when you're building than it is to retrofit it on later. And like when we're looking at, I haven't looked at anything to see how those passive homes hold up to 115 degree summer days when it doesn't really get below 80 at night. And I think that is a thing we have to think about now that we maybe didn't have to 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Like maybe I'd almost feel like some kind of optional venting system, something that you could close off. Although, I mean, even having an optional opening is probably enough to let some heat out.
Well, one of the things, so there's a couple of things about the passive home that are weird. One is that you have to buy special appliances for things like the dryer because they have to not vent. Sure. I think humidity control is probably a problem in those houses, especially if you live someplace wet like we do. The big one I would like, one of the things that people do here, this is aside from the passive house thing, but because it's usually hot during the day and then as soon as like the sun goes down and the fog rolls in, it gets really nice and cool. A lot of people do whole house fans, which is basically one really, really powerful ducted high CFM fan that can vent all of the air and suck all of the air out of the house in like 2-3 minutes. And you put that in a central location and then just blast it straight out into the house and open like crack windows in all of the rooms and then flip that thing on for 5 minutes and it turns over all the air in your house in like 5-10 minutes.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
It's awesome. We have some friends who have one and I regret not putting one in when we put the furnace in. I didn't know about it then. But they're like you can do one that's window mounted for like $100, or you can usually do a ducted one that goes in like the ceiling in your main hallway or something for under $1,000. So it's way cheaper than putting in air conditioning if you live someplace coastal.
So if somebody just came to you with a blank check and just like, hey, go build a house.
Yeah.
Where would you start these days? Like, I know you have not gone through. Okay. Interesting. So that's kind of what I wanted to get into here is just like, I don't know shit about this topic because I've never even owned previously somebody else's home, much less built one myself. But like, do you have any sense of, are there contractors out there that are specializing in futuristic, like I started to say modern building techniques, but of course they are, but like more forward looking stuff like the passive house or other like smart home oriented building stuff?
Well, I mean, you can always there's definitely people that do like the default for a new home construction today in terms of smart home stuff is really, really high. Like if you think about it, like the difference between a home that has like smart switches and stuff like that and a normal home is that you're paying, instead of paying, $3 for switches, you pay $35 for switches. So you're paying like 10x on the switches, but compared to the cost of building a house, which is going to be a couple $100,000 probably, like adding another $500 for or $1,000 for switches is a kind of inconsequential cost.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, that's just kind of like a slight variation on your existing electrical work, right? Like I'm thinking more big picture stuff. Like the concrete is a good example of something I wouldn't have expected to hear.
Well, so the concrete is interesting to me because it's thermally, like, it holds a lot of energy, so it's warm at night and cool during the day, right?
Okay.
You can insulate it pretty easily by putting styrofoam and stuff like that in between in between layers, some sort of insulating material.
Wait, styrofoam?
But yeah, so like those foam boards. So, one of the ways that you insulate the walls of a house now isn't by putting that rolled pink shit in. You just put a bunch of these foam boards in. And
what is that pink stuff?
It's fiberglass.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why it's so itchy.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So like that stuff works. It's resistant to weather, which is important in 2020. When we're looking at, like, I live on the coast and we see 60, 70 mile an hour wind gusts now. Like, I don't, when you get much higher wind than that, then shingles become a problem because they just blow off. And I don't want to deal with that. So, it's stuff like that. I think you can always find a contractor that'll do the stuff you want to do. The question is, can you find somebody that's going to do it on the budget that you want? And how much are you willing to spend to make that happen? And like, if I build a house, I'm not going to, first off, I would never encourage anybody to try building a house from the beginning, from the get go, if it's their first house, because you're just going to build a house and you're gonna be like, shit, I wish I'd done this and this and this and this and this. And then you're going to end up building another house 10 years later, which is what my parents did in the 80s, right? Like, they built 3 houses before they figured out what they liked.
Jeez.
And they had they were realtors. They had sold a bunch of houses. They had remodeled dozens of houses at that point, and they still fucked it up twice before they got it right. I think, like, smart lighting is a really easy thing to do. I say easy, but an easy air quotes thing to do that will make your house feel smart in a really impactful way. And it sounds stupid when you say it, but like, when you don't have to think about turning the lights on and off, when it's just a thing that happens for you, it's really nice.
Is there an aspect of that is more involved because you're building, as opposed to, like,
it's much easier because you're building? Like,
well, that's what I mean. Like, is there more? I guess a better way to ask this is, like, is there more you can do there than when you're just kind of retrofitting with like a kind of a home assistant setup? Or
so you can do things like integrate motion sensors in the places you want motion sensors.
Oh, sure.
It requires a little bit of future thinking about how you're going to use the house before you maybe know. But you can also do things that are relatively inexpensive. Like, it's really, when the walls are open, it's really cheap to run wires. And like, if you're willing to do it, you can just do it yourself, and you can run them and then hide them back behind the wall or in the attic or in the crawl space or whatever, and leave them there so that if you want to poke them up later, you can easily without having to do the actual runs yourself. So stuff like that, I highly recommend. Like, put Cat 6 anywhere. If you're building a house, put Cat 6 everywhere you can possibly imagine you'd ever want to have some sort of data or power connection.
So you're really getting into my wheelhouse here, because I love hiding electronics.
Yeah.
I strongly feel that gadgets should be used and not seen.
Yeah.
Which is why I've got all my network gear mounted on the back of this desk and stuff like that. But running cables is the most exciting thing to me about potentially owning a house someday, maybe. But I'm wondering if there's are there permanent solutions that you're aware of, or can you think of one for, like, I guess it would be some kind of a conduit situation where you could easily, some mechanism that would easily allow you to run any cable you want after the fact without opening walls back up, like some kind of conduit and open panel situation in the wall or something like that. Do you get what I'm saying?
So in my experience, conduit sometimes makes it harder. Like, if you run empty conduit, it's easy to run the wire through, but if there's already wires in the conduit, it's a challenge.
Well, that you get into the situation where you're like attaching the new wire to the end of the old wire and pulling it through, right? At that point.
Yeah, and that never works right. That never does what you want it to do.
But it sounds so simple.
Look, my father, when they built their office, he had this brilliant idea to put a bunch of conduit in the floor for Ethernet and stuff. And this was in like the early 90s, before Ethernet was really available. So we didn't know what cable to run. And we made it sealed. And then he was like, we're just going to hook a balloon on the end of this thing with some sand in it, and we'll hook the shop back up to the end we want it to come out, and it'll just work. And I was like, I don't know about this one, Dad. And it worked once, but then as soon as there was a wire in there or any like dead bugs or anything, it was a disaster. So I think it's if you have access to a space between floors. So if you have a crawl space below and an attic above, using a cable snake is super duper. Like a cable puller is really easy. You need a long drill bit. And you're gonna have to cut a hole in the wall to put your panel in anyway, to put your plug cover in. So you put electrical boxes behind that, and then screw the the panel covers into that, and screw whatever your jacks are into those boxes. And you can put those in a way that they don't have to tie into studs. You can leave those loose, and then that makes it even easier. But yeah, like if you drop strings down there, something like that, so you have something to tie off to, it's just going to come. The strings are just going to rot before you need them.
Yeah. I guess there's always going to be challenges to working inside of something that you can't see or maneuver around in.
Yeah, but but for $20 now, you can get a wireless snake scope thing that you can shove up in the walls to see. Yeah, did you not know about these?
This is like a laparoscopic house surgery or something.
It's like a laparoscopic camera for holes in your house and back. Like
that's incredible.
I bought them for gopher holes to jam one down in the gopher hole and see what you could see down there.
What did you see?
A bunch of dirt. It was really boring.
You didn't see any gophers?
No, it turns out they saw the light coming and were like, "Fuck this."
They had vacated the premises. Okay.
If you are not afraid to make a hole in your drywall and cover it with a plate. Like you just cut a hole that's the shape of the plate of the gang box that goes in there, and then you put one of the no stud gang boxes in that has ears, and they're like the ears are just like they're like little flaps that fold in when you're pushing it in. Then you turn a screw and they fold out, so it holds it up against the wall real tight.
Okay. As soon as you said a no stud gang box with ears, I got to the point where I assumed you were just making up terms.
No. And then like if you do that, and then you can get drill bits specifically for this. They're kind of expensive, but they're worth having if you're going to run a lot of cable that are like 4 or 5 feet long that you can angle in, and the shafts are bendy, so you can angle them into the gang box hole, get down to the floor where you're drilling through the floor, and then push them down through the hole. And then there's a string hole on the end that you can tie the string into and pull the bit and the cable and everything back up. So.
Okay. And is that somewhat reusable? Like really what I'm getting at here is just like, we're at a point now where like cable standards are changing often enough that you're probably going to want to swap cables in your walls out at some point. And so like some kind of like permanently or mostly permanently reusable situation where you could run new cables to replace the old ones. Like I'm surprised there's not more of a kind of an established solution for that.
I mean, it's just work. It's just hard work. Yeah. The thing to remember though is if you run Cat 6, which is good for up to 10 gigabit Ethernet, theoretically, through the walls, and then everything else lives in that server rack. Any fiber or anything weird that you're going to put in the future to make like the server talk to the switch more effectively is going to be easily accessible. And then if you want to get fancy, you can run some dark fiber to the entertainment center and where your main PC is going to go and stuff like that. But realistically, it's a long time before we're going to need fiber in the house, I think, for most people.
You're probably right. But yeah, it's only been in the last like year or so that fiber in the home has become enough of a thing that I would even have an idea like that. But like USB is another example of like, and this is getting into wall plates, and I wanted to mention that as well. Like, it seems like we're finally starting to actually go through the USB A to C transition.
I mean, USB-D is just around the horizon, Brad.
Let's not talk about that. Fool me once,
damn it,
can't get fooled again. I mean, this gets into the wall plate stuff a little bit, but like, is there a solution that is not like a hard installed wall plate, but is more of a kind of a soft pass through situation where you could run cables through? I feel like I'm not describing this well, but
you mean like to get USB power in your wall sockets?
Yeah, like again, like say up until about a year or two ago, you would have just defaulted to straight up 20-year-old USB-A ports, and forgotten about it. But like we are getting to that point now where like probably most of the devices I've gotten in the last 6 months are USB-C now. So like a solution that lets you swap things like that out without having to do a bunch of reinstalling.
So switching out like power outlets is really, really easy. Like if you know how to turn off the circuit breaker for the outlet and know how to test to make sure that that breaker is actually off, which means like you flip the breaker that you think is going to turn off those sockets that you're looking at. And then you plug something in and make sure it doesn't turn on when the breaker is turned off. Right. Then you take off the gang plate cover, you unscrew the 2 screws that hold that outlet in place. And then there's 3 screws and 3 wires on the back of that. You don't ever want to touch the copper part because some of it can still be hot, even if the breaker's off. But you unscrew those 3 wires and then you screw 3 wires back onto the new outlet. And if I think the safe way to do it is probably to do one at a time and like unhook and then rescrew and then unhook and rescrew. It's like a 10-minute job. Like
Okay.
it's I wouldn't want to do it every year, but I wouldn't like if there's a big transition. Like one of the things Gina had asked about was if we could get some USB ports on kitchen counter, because like often there's an iPad or a phone or something there that's being used while one of us is working in the kitchen. And it would be nice to be able to just charge that stuff straight from the wall without having to have a brick there. But
What if you haul it out the bottom of the counter and installed wireless charging in there instead?
Look, that is if the devices at hand used wireless charging, that would be a totally viable solution.
Here's maybe a better test case for what I'm talking about. Like you're totally right about swapping out the USB power ports, but like a solution for just passing cables through a wall. Like the idea I have is like, let's say you've got like your office with your PC in one room and across the wall on the other side is your living room with your big TV.
Yeah.
Let's say you want to run like a video out through the wall from your PC.
I have that.
Okay. So as opposed to having to install wall plates and daisy chaining,
Mhm.
you know, you like I guess the standard way to do it is you would plug HDMI from PC into a wall plate. There's another cable behind that inside the wall that goes to another wall plate on the other side. So you're going through like 3 or 4 discrete cables there.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because to the computer, it just sees it as one. So that's that's exactly what I have. So I have on one wall plate, there's female jacks facing out on both sides of the wall.
Right.
One of the wall plates has a female socket on the inside and one has a male wire coming out of the back. And they're literally like 3 inches apart from each other on either side of the wall. So I plugged them in, put those plates on, and it's good. That's it. That's all there is to it.
Sure.
Ideally you want to do those on gang boxes that are hammered into studs, because the HDMI connector is requires a fair amount of force to pull in and out. And on those ear gang boxes, it's a little wobbly.
Sure.
But yeah, that works fine. It's worked for me for a long time. If I want to go to 4K, I think I have HDMI 1.3 or whatever ports in there.
That's why I actually bring this up, is that even, HDMI standards are changing. And at some point you're not going to be able to do what you want to do with those wall plates anymore. So like I was envisioning like almost like a doggy door for cables where you could just pass a cable through a wall, like a little trap door situation.
So I had
like
that for a long time, and I switched to this because it was less annoying. Having the cable dangling through the wall, like you can put just like a loopy gang box on there that'll protect the wall so that the cable doesn't like erode the gypsum board or anything. But like it was not having the ability to move that cable through the wall was bad for a lot of reasons. Like it made gypsum dust everywhere.
Oh,
it opened a huge hole into the cold part of the house. So like it essentially vented the crawl space into my living room, which wasn't great. There were a lot of reasons that it was. So the other thing is the on the wall plates, if you buy all the same kind of wall plates, which you should if you're building a house, then the hole size for each socket is a standard. So for example, you can get like a 3-hole wall plate that has 3 squares in it. And one square was Ethernet, one square was HDMI, and one square was cable back when that was a thing. Okay. And then you can pop those out and replace them really easily. So like if you want to replace the HDMI one, you just get the new version of HDMI, pop that one out, put the new one in.
Oh, you mean the literal port would come out?
The literal port is like a little square. It's just
a cutout for the port to fit into.
Yeah, it's like that's 1 inch by 1.5 inches or something like that.
Okay, and I assumed all the plates you would buy would come with ports kind of hard wired into them.
No. And those ports are like no more than $10. Usually they're like the Ethernet ports are like 50 cents each when you buy them in bulk. So
I'm all about reusable and replaceable and kind of modular solutions and not being locked into any standards for too long. So that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, it won't apply to the power because there's transformers and stuff that have to happen in the power sockets. But yeah, it's like there's no reason not to like that stuff is super, super easy to upgrade.
Okay.
One of the other things I have spent a lot of time thinking about, spending a lot of time in a relatively small room with one vent and no air conditioning, and running a giant ass computer with a 300 watt GPU or something in it, is that it would be swell to have use the heat generated in this room to heat the rest of the house, and B, have a way to get the heat generated in this room out of this room without necessarily roasting everybody else in the house.
Okay. You should undervolt that GPU.
Look,
I did it. It's pretty awesome. That card is consuming, this 3080 is consuming, let's say 50 to 70 watts less now than it was.
How much performance did you take?
0. I mean, I haven't benchmarked it. Well, I did do some. I
haven't benchmarked it.
I did a few benchmarks and eyeballed the numbers look the same, and I certainly can't tell a difference in any of the games I've played yet.
Well, I played PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, the ultimate life and death fight, a crafting game union game, which is not actually a union, but just claims to be a union. I'll try it.
I capped the clock speed at, let's see, I capped it at 1850, and I think it was spiking up to like maybe 1900. So you're only,
50 hertz.
What is a 50 megahertz difference on the GPU with all the other bottlenecks you're talking about, right? Like I can't tell a difference.
I'll give it a try.
It's pretty
convinced me.
It's pretty good.
Anyway. It still gets hot as shit in here because there's two computers running. Like if I had a way that I could, if I could run fiber to the garage and like have everything that's on the streaming PC, like have a bunch of connections here for all the stuff that's on the streaming PC, but not have to have the streaming PC right here, totally would do that.
So that is like maybe the biggest question I brought into this thing.
Yeah.
Is a way to do basically exactly what you just brought up, which is like, I love the idea of having a rack in the basement that's not just, say, a NAS and maybe even like your pfSense box if you want to rack one of those, but also like, what if your streaming box was a rack mounted thing in that stack? Like what if X, Y, and Z that is not like gaming consoles and your desktop gaming PC all just lived in that same stack? But then you get into situations where it's like, okay, well, now I need to run a 20-foot USB cable up to a hub. Need to run 20, 30 feet of HDMI. You know what I mean? Like some of those cables don't travel over distances like that very well. And some of those connectors just aren't made to be extended out, period. So like, I'm trying to think. If you had
all this stuff in a basement and your office was directly above the rack,
right?
It's only like a 5-foot run, 10-foot run.
So yeah, I'm trying to visualize like what are all the things you would need to run to be able to have like every PC that's not your desktop in a different room.
So for me, it's 2 HDMI, USB, and a display port,
right,
or HDMI.
So that's pretty doable.
I mean,
I guess.
Look, in a perfect world, somebody would make some sort of like a port streamer thing that takes all of these joobers. You plug one box in on one end, there's fiber on the other end, and then you run it through fiber or whatever, Thunderbolt 3, whatever it is,
up into one cable?
thing, and then the ports there's the same ports on the other end.
That sounds impossible.
It's like a digital snake. That's all impossible. I want.
It's not so much to ask.
No, it's simple, really.
Yeah.
The dedicated cooling, like the dedicated studio space is, I think, the thing that keeps the passive house from working for me.
Yeah.
Because I think I probably generate too much heat in here.
Just pumping way too much energy into the equation.
Look, I'm just a big watt generator, man. I just can't stop cranking those watts.
I've heard that about you.
Yeah.
I watched a video recently that I thought was pretty interesting. And to be fair, I feel like it's kind of a sad commentary on the times.
Yeah.
Because it was about apartments. It was about housing in San Francisco, about the housing crisis in San Francisco, apartments and how they were maximizing space. And it might have come out of our Discord, actually. But essentially, they were attaching things like your bed and dresser space and really just about anything that's not like a chair to the ceiling with a system of motorized pulleys.
Oh, I like this.
Like everything would just retract into the ceiling after you got up and started going about your day.
Is this like a tiny house hack?
So yes, like in this case, and again, this is why I said it's a sad commentary. In this case, this was a way to allow a person to live in like, I don't know, a 1 8x10 room or something.
I love this.
For their entire living space. And like the space would become the bedroom at night when you lowered the bed down from the ceiling. It would become kind of a living room in the day when the bed was up there, that kind of thing.
This is the other thing. If I were building right now, I would do higher ceilings because like our ceilings are too low to do that kind of stuff. And I think like for a if you, especially if you're talking about a small house, which if you live in a coastal area or a city someplace, you're going to have, like, having the ability to do lofts for stuff that's like having the ability to loft my kid's bed in her bedroom would be amazing. But with 8-foot ceilings, there's not enough space underneath the loft to make it actually usable space. It's just kind of like, at best, a reading nook or something. Like, it's not like someplace we could put her school desk or anything like that. So why bother? It just means that, like, if it's harder to make her bed, so we're not going to fuck with it. I'm very into, like, I love one of my favorite things is like seeing a loft where they put drawers underneath the stairs to get up to the loft.
Sure.
Like that seems like a super useful thing because usually it's just dead space. Like, I think all that stuff is super cool.
If you could fold your bed away, would you ever make your bed again?
I mean, I would make my bed every day when I fold it up into the wall.
I don't think that counts.
Look, the bed's made, honey.
How are you going to know the difference?
Yeah,
Just got to take my word for it.
Schrodinger's bed.
You'll find out when you lie in it.
Yeah, is it made or unmade? Who knows? Oh, well, it looks like it was messed up. It must have gotten messed up when it folded up in there. I don't know what's going on.
That pulley, man, that thing just really has a mind of its own.
Here's my question: is if you have the folding up bed, do you still sleep with your head toward the wall? Where if the bed folds up while you're in there, you're going to be standing on your head and like break your neck potentially, or do you sleep with your feet to the wall and your head in the middle of the room?
That's a good question.
Like, why everybody sleeps with their head to the wall? Why do we sleep with our head to the wall? It's a weird thing.
You're talking about the bed like folding down from vertical to horizontal?
Yeah, like, have you ever been inside a Murphy bed when it was folded up?
Oh.
We rented a house one time when I was a kid with some friends for like a family vacation.
Typing Murphy bed into Google here.
Murphy bed is the one that folds out. It's like on hydraulics and it folds up into the box on the wall.
I see.
And we spent the entire weekend, like, this other family and my sister and I folding each other up into the beds.
Of course.
And like, it was definitely better to be feet feet down when you were folded up in the bed, because it was a little hinky if you were head down.
I could say a little hinky maybe sounds like an understatement to me.
Look, when you're 10, a little hinky is okay. When you're 40, a little hinky is shit. I'm gonna have to go get a physical therapist now.
That's fair. So the situation I'm talking about, the bed remained horizontal at all times. It was literally suspended from the ceiling on. Yes. And like you literally hit a button and it just retracted upwards into the ceiling. It did not fold.
We thought about doing that for the kiddos' bed too, just like hooking chains on the four corners and hoisting it up so it's like 4 feet off the ground. It was a bad idea.
Decided against it, yeah.
Gina was like, I'm not allowing this. And she was probably right.
There's just obvious safety concerns to having an entire bed suspended over your head all day long. But I didn't fully grasp the mechanics of this. But they said they have some like foolproof mechanical solution for making sure those things don't ever fall down. Like,
do we need to refer back to the Douglas Adams thing about the only difference between a thing that is impossible to fail and designed to fail is that, you know, when it does fail, it'll be impossible to fix?
Sure. They swore that it was mechanically impossible for that bed to fall on your head, but I'm not just entirely sure.
I don't know. I don't know about impossible to fail. That seems unlikely to me, but I like that. Like, there's something. So there are three of us. We live in a 1,000 square foot house, which in most of the country is a pretty small house, I think. I really like living in a small house. If I could change one thing, it would be awesome to have 2 bathrooms.
I could see it.
1 bathroom with a kid and like everybody having to get out of the house at the same time of the day is a little bit of a challenge.
Well, now nobody has to leave the house or can leave the house ever. So that problem has been obviated.
Yeah, this is weird. I've become a nighttime shower guy.
So have I.
Like, I like to take a shower right before bed because then I get into bed. The sheets are all nice. I'm all clean when I get in the sheets.
Yeah, totally. I'm with you. I mean, the only downside of that is when you put it off for too long and then you get sleepy and then you don't want to bother, but you also don't want to get in the bed dirty.
I mean, realistically, how dirty are we getting these days?
Then you find yourself sleeping on the couch occasionally. But
look, I've done that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had not heard that from anybody else, and it hadn't.
Yeah, I've always been a morning shower guy, and now I've had to adapt to being an evening shower. Sometimes I do both, but usually it's just evening.
Yeah.
I feel like let's see, what else are we forgetting? Anything that was on the?
I don't know. I thought we might dream a little bigger than we have here. I was trying to come up with some Just like outlandish ideas for like, if money was no object, what would you do if you were building a house? Like, what kind of cool future stuff would you do to tech up your house? But
I would absolutely do full solar and some sort of storage thing.
That was like the last thing I was going to mention. But, I mean, that is a big pie in the sky thing of like, let's just say that batteries are 10 times more efficient. Now we can do this.
I don't even think it's that pie in the sky. I think if you design the house and think about how you so the secret of doing generators, because we had generators at my house when I was a kid, and my parents have generators at their house now, because the power goes out fairly often in the winter. And since they're all electric utilities and on a well, like they don't have toilets if the power goes out.
But I lived that reality for the entirety of my youth, so I get it.
Yeah. So the trick is you don't want to have the circuits that are on the failover. So you have to decide which circuits are on the failover when the power goes out, right? And you have to be smart about that because it has to be the things that actually need to stay on, like the refrigerator and the wellhead pump, and probably your internet, if that's a thing that can conceivably keep going when the power's out. But you don't like they don't have I think the things that they have on are their master bedroom, the kitchen stuff. And then like living room, they use portable lamp. They use like solar charging lanterns if the power is out. The heat pump is on. But then the only bedrooms that have power are their bedroom and I think one of the guest rooms maybe. And it ends up like if you design your stuff so that the batteries are running that thing and you live someplace that gets enough sun and you have enough solar panels on the roof, you should be able to live more or less normally. With like a reasonable number of panels and a reasonable number of batteries at this point.
Do you have any idea what quantity? I mean, I don't know that numbers would be super meaningful to me, but I wonder like just kind of maybe an hour count of how much power you could reasonably store these days.
I mean, the power walls, I'd have to look it up, but the power walls that Tesla is selling I'm going to type right now. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Actually, I mean, are the power walls, are the use cases for those intended to be to run a home on? That's not for like charging their vehicles?
Yeah, no, the whole point of it is to run the home.
Okay.
So the point of it is to buy electricity from the grid at night when it's cheap and to sell it back during the day when it's expensive. Capitalism. Let's see. I'm looking to see how much energy they have. And you can do failover with them. So like the trick is if you want to do failover with solar so that you have power when the sun's out, you still have to have some sort of circuit that turns everything off so you don't pump energy back in the grid and electrocute the line workers, which obviously would be bad. The power walls hold like 2-3 kilowatt hours, I think. Okay. Oh, here we go. Specs. 13.5 kilowatt hours on the power wall.
Oh, that's not nothing.
And they can be floor or wall mounted, indoor or outdoor. You can do up to 10. So like a house my size, I would need like 2 probably.
That's not so bad.
And that's even if I want to keep using like the gaming PC and the giant TV and stuff like that.
That's actually like more feasible than I realized. I guess the key is how expensive are those things?
Well, I mean, so the thing about the roof, the solar, is you probably want to do it when you do a roof, right? Because like you don't want to have the roof. Hold on, let's see what I'm going to see what they recommend for my house. $250 is the average electric bill. No. See recommendation. So they say 3 power walls for $25,000, $24,500. And if I add another $12,000, they can give me 8.6 kilowatts worth of solar panels.
Wait, was that just 30, that was okay?
That's, so yeah, $36,000 for the panels and the wall, which is pretty expensive.
Well, that is expensive, but those are the types of prices I was seeing people quoting just for the solar panel install, a handful of years ago.
Well, and I was going to say, so presumably that puts me at $250 a month off of my electric bill. So I'm not paying $1,000 every 4 months. So in that context, you're looking at 4 divided by 4 times 36 is so like 10 years you paid for it.
Still a good handful of years to pay itself off. But
the thing is, I don't know what the lifespan on the batteries is. I assume that they're building these things with enough capacity above and below so that you don't dip into the 80+% and the sub 0%. So presumably they should last a really long time.
Yeah. We've
and also you shouldn't probably. I mean, I guess you use them all the time because the point is to buy electricity when it's cheap and sell it when it's expensive. So.
Right. I've just barely been looking at failover generator situations recently, even for like gas powered ones. Those are not cheap. Like I was looking at them for my parents who might need them in the near future, but like that they've got like a manual generator, but the ones that fully tie in are a pretty penny.
And just so you know, with the 3 walls, three batteries and the panels that they recommend, they're saying it's 7.5 days backup duration before you start losing. So you have full power for 7.5 days before the batteries are drained all the way.
That's not terrible.
Yeah. And presumably if you are thoughtful about your electrical use, during the daytime, then you're back on. So anyway, and they're saying that's a $40,000 25-year savings, which is a little suspect, but anyway.
That's a sales pitch for you.
Yeah. I don't think that is an unreasonable thing to spend money on at this point.
No.
Especially if Tesla is the place I would buy the batteries. I know that they've had problems with their solar panels. I don't know how the batteries are. I haven't looked at any of the stuff, so don't take that as a recommendation for a product to buy. I'm just using it as an example because it's the one everybody knows.
Yeah. But I mean, especially if you're in an area prone to frequent outages like we are, where you would think that they should have just buried all the power lines several decades ago instead of having to fix them 5 times every winter. But
the other thing is the economics on that change dramatically if you're not in a state that lets you sell power back to the power company during the day when the panels are generating.
I didn't know there were such states.
Yeah, Texas is like that. So if you can sell to the grid during the day when the price is high and buy back at night when the price is low because demand is low, this makes a ton of sense. If you are someplace that does not allow you to do that, the economics change pretty dramatically. So
sure.
And it'll take a lot longer to pay off.
Oh.
Anyway. I think that's as good a place as any to wrap it up.
Decent little survey. I appreciate hearing about all this advice that I will never get to make use of as long as I live in the state of California.
You'll get there.
Maybe.
Look, there's a crash coming. It's a good time to buy when when the market really bottoms out.
I hear Fresno is nice.
Central Valley, hot. What I feel like there's got to be some crazy pie in the sky thing, but I don't want a panopticon around my house, right?
Right. Probably not.
I mean, maybe I guess it would be cool to have like a house-based drone that flies up and surveys the perimeter and scares off. Here's what I would like. I would like something that keeps the raccoons and gophers and skunks from digging up my backyard every goddamn night. That would be dope. Like a little robot that comes out and yells at them and squirts them with water.
Okay, I was thinking maybe like some kind of ultrasonic device or something, but maybe that works too. Robots are always good.
Maybe if I get one of those little robotic mowers, I can just set it to trigger whenever there's motion, go out and scare them off. I mean, like a water capture system. I feel like we waste a ton of water in gray water.
Like we're not the experts to talk about this, but I would love to hear from people, more ecologically minded people. Like the passive house is a good example of that, right? Of something that is just like, not exactly high tech. Like it's all pretty sensible conservation stuff, but it's employed in a very efficient way to just reduce resource constraints.
Well, I went to a talk a few years ago from a woman who is a gray water environmentalist, and she's like, look, it's asinine that we flush our toilets with drinking water when our houses produce a ton of non-potable water that we should be using for that. And like the plumbing change to make it, like there's the cost to make your toilets flush with gray water when you're building is almost nothing, because you basically just add a pump and a cistern to collect water from kitchen sinks, bathroom sinks, utility sinks, stuff like that, and then pump that and then run a separate water line from there to the toilet, right? To fill the toilet tanks. And it's like a few $100 worth of stuff and maybe a little bit more hassle when you're building. It's really hard to retrofit in though, because the plumbing is just one giant maze of pipes. And it means that we would use because the toilets are one of the biggest water consumers in most people's houses, especially if you have old toilets. So Stuff like that is like the kind of outside the box thinking that costs practically nothing and has a massive impact.
Seems like a lot of inefficiencies in home building built up around things just being done the way they've always been done.
There's a lot.
Like, that seems like the big impediment in a lot of cases.
Well, that, and then there's also a lot of like, if you're talking about houses that are built in mass, tract houses are usually built by in the cheapest way possible.
Sure.
So they don't do things like put bucking insulation in the walls because this code only requires it in the ceilings or in the attic or whatever. And you end up with these houses that like cost $30,000 less than to do it the right way. But the total cost of ownership over 40 years of the 50-year lifespan of the house is hundreds of thousands of dollars more because we're wasting and we're contributing to carbon in the atmosphere and all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, anyway.
Have you ever looked into lawn upkeep in that context? Like I was reading the other day that clover is kind of becoming a big thing in lawn management because it's very self-sustaining and like much lower water requirements. And I want to say it's like a better ecosystem for insects and stuff like that as well.
So the monolithic lawn is one of those things that's really bad for the environment because you replace native stuff with non-native stuff, and then you get rid of all of the food that the bugs and the critters and stuff eat. So like my gopher problem is explicitly because we have a fescue lawn and it attracts a lot of grubs, and the gophers like the grubs, and then here we are. The lawns are a shit show. I mean, I if we didn't have a kid, I would have gotten rid of my lawn. As soon as she's not interested in playing in the backyard, we're going to replace the lawn with stuff that is native and doesn't require watering, because the watering is the problem as much as anything.
Yeah. What is the term for the type of lawn that requires zero irrigation? Like it's basically a dry lawn. It's like kind of landscape with rocks and stuff like that.
The fake grass is really good now too. Like
there's a word for that kind of landscaping, and I can't remember what it is.
I mean, it's just arid landscaping, maybe. I don't know. The trick is all you have to do is plant native plants, because the native plants know what to do here, right? Like the other benefit is that if you plant that stuff, you don't have to maintain it as much. So, versus mowing the lawn twice a week in the summer because you fertilize it like an asshole, like I do.
Yes.
then you are just have stuff that's supposed to grow here, and it works well, and it's pretty and looks nice, and all,
Xeriscaping is the word I was looking for. XERI scaping.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get somebody's water bill who lives in Beverly Hills because they gave my email address as their email address when they signed up.
Wow.
So I get angry notifications when they go over their watering allotment every month.
Yeah.
It's great. Really terrific.
That's good stuff.
But yeah, I think stuff like that. I mean, I think the thing to do is think about what the impact of your house is, what the footprint is, and doing things like insulating better reduces carbon emissions because you use less energy to heat and cool. Landscaping appropriately uses less water. Building something that is sturdy and isn't going to have to be torn down in 20 years because it didn't hold up to the changes in the climate and the weather that we're going to face is important, because like the most environmentally catastrophic thing you can do when you're building your house is build a house, right? Like you're cutting down trees, you're making nails, you're building all this plastic to go in insulation and all this stuff. And like you need to make that last as long as you can. So that's why I like concrete. Brutalist.
Yes.
The Brutalist knew what was up.
It tends to stick around.
I don't know if I want to live in a concrete house. That was the thing.
Yeah. You can put whatever you want on the inside.
That's true. That's true. Speaking of things that we are thankful for, I did a lot of thinking about things I was thankful for as I was watching, like I said, my daughter and wife play video games with voice from across the world with friends and family members. And I was like, this is amazing.
Well, there's a lot of things we take for granted these days.
Yeah. Sometimes the future is good, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm thankful for our patrons who
me too.
Have been a really positive force in my life for the last year. Like the checking in on the Discord every day has been a source of sanity and fun and human contact that it's been really nice as we've been stuck in our homes.
For sure.
And this is the last episode of the month. So as always, we thank our a bunch of more patrons than normal. But first, let's thank the executive producer level patrons, Jacob Chappell, Andrew Cotton, and David Allen. As always, we appreciate you guys, but we also appreciate our associate producers and everyone else. So thanks to Tom Hilton, Jacob Wilson, Terry Cox, Arthur Geese, The Bunny Fiend, Ben Gulmy, Dave Ulian, Dan Brockman, Jad Rita, Thomas Shea, and Graham Banks. Thank you all so much. And,
Yes,
and
thank you.
everyone from all levels of the Discord, of the Patreon on up. If you want to find out how to get in on the Discord action, you can for $2 a month at patreon.com/techpod. I don't know what we're going to do our patron exclusive episode about this month right now.
I'm sorry, our what exclusive episode?
Patron exclusive episode.
Oh, that. Right. Yes.
Hey, did you hear that I pronounced the person from Denmark's name right? Or
Oh.
Finland? I can't remember. Denmark.
Oh, Finnish. I believe Finnish.
Finnish,
It
yeah.
was. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I got the
believe you
ya.
did.
Yeah.
Yes.
See,
Yes.
occasionally.
Yes. Once in a while. As long as it's Scandinavian.
Yeah. But you can find out again, it's patreon.com/techpod. You can find out how to support the show. We appreciate it. Look, we know that this year is brutal for everyone. So if you can't support the show, that's also fine.
Yeah. Just tell your friends,
Yeah. Tell your friends.
Spread the word.
Do the tweets. Let the people on your other Discords know that there's a better Discord out there. Come in and be like, hey man, this Discord blows. You know, it's a great Discord. The Tech Pod Discord. It rips. It's like 9 out of 10, 9.9 out of 10.
There you go.
We had somebody come in the other day who worked at Canopus in the 90s.
What?
Did you not see it yesterday?
What?
You got to go back.
Hang on. I am
Maybe it was this morning
literally,
even.
I am literally typing that word into the search right now.
Yeah, it was good stories there.
What? Wow, man. Holy.
Maybe we should start doing member spotlights for the Patreon.
I started
exclusives.
to just quote from what they said, but I don't think that's maybe.
Yeah,
I'll
no,
let people, people join and read it. No, it's not like there's anything sensitive in it or not, but it just looks like oh my God.
Yeah.
We have to end this podcast. I have to read this conversation right now.
There we go.
Holy crap.
We'll be back next week.
Wait,
Yeah.
he's got the source code from that?
Look, man.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good Discord, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a good time.
We will be back next week with another episode. Patron exclusive episode coming soon. Let's say maybe 1st of December, since this month has kind of happened fast.
Yes, it has.
We'll get it out sometime this week, though.
Yes.
Thanks, Brad. It's good to talk to you as always, man.
Yep. Take care, y'all.
Bye, everybody.